Thank you for tuning in to this next episode of 100% Tilted Discussions with Winning Underdogs. And this story of fitness influencer Kerri Hayes is nothing short of inspirational and aspirational. Kerri came from a very large family of 11 siblings, but also found herself being raised in a cult. Having walked away from her family at the age of 18 with nothing to support her, nothing to help her, she had to build a life that she now gets to enjoy, but not without a lot of obstacles in the way. Where so many find themselves living a life of pattern of being a victim to the circumstances that she was raised in, Kerri found a different way to build the life that she's now proud of by taking advantage of some significant opportunities as a young budding influencer with social media in her tool chest. Taking that mentorship, taking that guide, she truly found a way to not only take those obstacles as tools and lessons, but using them with a passion to help others. This episode is deeply personal and very unveiling for Kerri, and we certainly appreciate her candor and her willingness to really share what she had to do to overcome these significant obstacles in her life to live a life that she is proud to live and stand on her own 2 feet and find a way. She has a lot to live. She has a lot of accomplishments still yet to ever reach. But what she has accomplished up to this moment is truly an incredible story that we appreciate Kerri coming in and giving us her time and hope that you'll be inspired right along with us. Without further ado, we give you Kerri Hayes.
So I actually grew up in a cult. Not many people know this. I haven't really talked about it.
I did too.
Did you really?
Yeah.
So I grew up in a cult.
Oh, we got some talks.
Yeah. It was called the Children of God. It was an international cult. I want to say they had 30,000 plus members or something like that. It was not a good cult, to say the least. It had
They never usually are.
good aspects to it. There were certain things about it that were good. They definitely were a religious cult by all intents and purposes, but they did have some very, they had some fucked up things there. I mean, it was a lot of, I'll let you do your research on it, obviously. But one of the main things was there's a lot of child abuse. There was a lot of sexual abuse. There was essentially forced child labor, child trafficking. There was prostitution disguised as helping recruit followers to Christ. So there was a lot of dark things about the cult. The leader of the cult was a pedophile, incestuous, like an alcoholic, an abuser. He had multiple, relationships, whatnot. His son actually ended up, and you can even Google this part. His son ended up finding his nanny, who had sexually abused him as a little boy, murdering her and then killing himself. And he posted a video, he recorded a video just talking about his childhood and everything like that. The cult has been featured on 2020, Oprah Winfrey, Larry King Live, all kinds of stuff, because it was publicly noticed. I can't remember what year, but in Australia and in England, the British government tried to take control over the children, or take the children away from the parents, because of the abuse that was being known and heard about and talked about in the circles. And I think it was a pair of grandparents were trying to get their kids out of the cult, or get their grandkids out of the cult. So it started getting a lot of public attention, which that's around the time when they started changing their policies and started saying okay, no more of this. But of course, at that point, it was just perpetrated throughout the thing, throughout the cult. So it was it was almost like a bad habit that was hard for them to break at that point.
Yeah.
It had been going on for years. So anyways, long story short, a lot of people ask me oh, did you leave the cult because you no longer wanted to be abused? And honestly, the truth is I left because they had a philosophy. They thought the end of the world was coming in 1993. So they didn't educate their children. Like, we weren't actually given proper education. We weren't, we were socially cut off from the entire world. We were not allowed to watch television, read books, listen to music, anything that had to do with the outside world. They were all considered outsiders. The police were considered the Antichrist, like all kinds of stuff. But people always ask me, like, okay, did you leave because of the abuse? And honestly, no, it was because I wanted to do so much more with my life. And to some people that might seem contradictory, because it's like, well, you grew up as a missionary helping people. Mm-hmm. And yes, but like, my parents couldn't provide for us. Like, we were starving when we were kids. We didn't have proper education. We didn't have, proper housing. We didn't have, things necessities in life. And we were put to work in order to get even just the bare minimum. So it's like, because I wanted more for my life, and I wanted more for, like, if I had children, my future. Mm-hmm. I didn't ever want them to have to feel like the sacrifices that I'm making for myself, I was making sacrifices for, like, of them as well, mm-hmm. Because it's like my parents were so self-sacrificing, like, we're doing God's work. We're going to sacrifice our time because we're going to get stars and our crown in heaven. Well, essentially, you were also sacrificing your children's lives and their upbringing and how they were raised and their education, because your mission was so hell-bent on, the self-sacrifice part, in the sense
the rewards
that, like,
in heaven part.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very familiar with that.
So,
yeah, interesting.
I feel like that's a lot of, like, very common cult, like, thing.
Yeah.
Theme, But anyways, I don't mind touching on that. I'm not opposed to it anymore. I've kind of started, like, telling people about it lately, and the reason why, because my story is really weird, but the reason why I haven't really talked about it much is because my family was personally affected by the abuse. Myself and some of my siblings were all sexually abused.
How many siblings do you have?
I have 11. Yeah, so I have 11 brothers and sisters.
Wow, where do you fall in line?
I'm number 5.
I'm number 5.
Yeah, I'm 6 boys and 6 girls was the total.
Wow.
When I was 16 years old, my brother right above me committed suicide, and that kind of started the pendulum of my life. Where
how old were you?
I was 16 years old. I was 16 years old. He was 17. And before that point, like, how they say, like, everything has a reason. Like, God has there's a reason for everything happening. And obviously, I never wanted to see my brother die. But up until that point, my parents had been so caught up in that cult mentality that they couldn't even hear their own children crying for help, mm-hmm. essentially. And they couldn't, it fell on deaf ears. Mm-hmm. So no matter how much we rebelled or how much we cried out for help, they just couldn't hear it. And then when he died, it was the first time I ever saw my dad cry. And it was like their whole view of how they suddenly looked at their children as, okay, these are no longer tools that God gave us to use. These are our children, and what are we going to do to make sure that they have a life and a good life?
Yeah.
And it changed the way they disciplined us. It changed the way they, interacted with us and even listened to us. We were no longer just objects that they were directing their attention at. It was like, what do you guys need from us too? So it was a pivotal point for, like, my family, in the sense that it actually allowed us to have real relationships with our parents versus just, being talked at. We were being talked to, So that was, like, the first thing. And then my personal real thing that I don't ever talk about, but it was honestly why I started competing, was I was 24, 25 years old. Actually, probably, about 24, 25 years old in 2000, maybe like 10. I was really on this I went through this period in my early 20s where I was so sick of helping other people. Like, truly, I was like, I'm done being a missionary. I'm done helping other people. I'm going to be selfish. So I went through this period where I was like, I'm going to live my life the way I want to live it. So I got into partying. I was doing a lot of drugs. I was just living my best life. Right. And I was kind of starting to go down this like downward spiral in that sense, where it's just like, I didn't really have a goal, didn't have a purpose, didn't have anything that I was pushing towards.
It was the other end of the spectrum for you.
Yeah.
Coming from where you were.
Completely opposite of other end of the spectrum.
And we have to do that.
Yeah. And honestly, like when you grow up in the environment where you're so segregated from the outside world that you actually have no exposure.
You want everything.
I literally had to learn who I was and how to interact and even socially interact in the world at 18 years old, because that's when I left. At 17 years old, I got on a bus, came to Houston, $200 in my
From what
pocket.
city?
Austin. My parents were living in Austin at the time. And I started my life. I was like, I don't know what
Peace
I'm going to
out.
fucking do. I just know I'm getting the fuck out of this. And that's when I started my life. And then I ended up kind of just going through this like really selfish phase where I was like, I don't have any goals. I don't know what I'm going to be. I don't know who I'm going to be. I went to school to become a paralegal, became a paralegal, got bored of that really quick because I was like, I fucking hate law. I really just did it to appease my parents and show them, hey, I'm smart enough. I can do this on my own. And then became a bartender, was bartending at Chrome and all the clubs back in the day for several years, and just kind of.
We probably crossed paths.
Yeah.
We didn't realize it. Yeah.
I was just wasting my life, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was about 26, I got a call. Like my dad came into my work and he told me, he said, Kerri, me and your little brother are going to go to prison. And I was like, okay, like, well, what's going on? I had no idea. Long story short, my little brother, who I guess he was 21 at the time, but he was 20 at the time. He had been charged. Well, essentially he had been charged with having sex with a minor. And the police came to the house, to his house, to where he was living. He was living with my dad. My dad was trying to help him get on his feet. And they told him, hey, we're going to arrest you for the crime. Don't go anywhere. And then they asked, like, is there anything in this house that we should know about? And essentially my dad confessed and said, I have pictures of child pornography on my computer. So both my dad and my little brother were taken to prison. My little brother is serving 25 years in prison for having sex with a minor in federal prison for having sex with a minor when he was 17 years old. But because he crossed state lines to do it, they charged him as an adult.
Wow.
And my dad was taken to prison. They didn't have a lot of evidence on that. So he served 6 months, was on probation for 10 years, served his time, and had been in therapy and all that stuff, whatnot for that entire period of time after he served his time. Now he's going to college to actually become a social worker to try to help people who have been through things, and he just wants to do, like, for me, I look at that as somebody who actually acknowledged his mistakes, realized what he did, and is desperately trying to
right the wrong,
and give back in a way in order to prevent something like this from happening again to somebody else, because he realized just how badly it affected my family.
Yeah.
So when that happened, that was literally my collapse. Like my mom wasn't living here. It was my mom was still living in Europe with my little sister and my younger brothers and sisters.
What part of Europe?
She was living in Turkey at the time. So I was essentially the oldest adult or the oldest girl in the United States that could help facilitate what was going on with my family. My two older siblings, like the older ones, had kids. They were all not living in the country. We were all kind of spread out at the time. So I had to grow up really fucking fast in order to kind of handle what was going on. I had no idea how to deal with lawyers or attorneys or the police or anything like that. And I literally was getting to the point where I was like, I can't fucking do this. Like, I will not survive another day if I don't somehow get control of myself. My boyfriend broke up with me because of it. He essentially kind of accused me and somehow blamed me, like, well, we can't be together because if we ever have kids, I'm never going to let them around your family. So if you can't deal with it, then blah, 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 blah. I lost my job at the time because I just wasn't showing up to work. I was so emotionally distraught. I couldn't really explain that to my boss at the time. So
yeah, how do you even talk about it?
Yeah. So I had been at that point in time, I had already kind of been thinking about competing. I was like, this might be something. And
you'd already been like an athlete, working out, that kind of thing.
I had been working out maybe for like a year or two at that point. So I was familiar with the whole idea of it and everything. But at that point I was like, I'm going to throw myself into this because if there's anything that could essentially save my life, it's pouring myself into something and disciplining my mind to do things that are probably going to require so much focus and attention that I'm not going to be able to think about anything else, and I'm going to be a machine.
Also gives you control.
Yeah, and it gave me a lot of control.
When everything else was out of control.
100%.
You know, that's what I found a lot of people whether it's a loss of a job or if it's a relocation and they're in a completely new place, or if it's a relationship that went south, the one thing people lean towards is health or working out because or sport, something, because it's like a physical outlet. But
100%.
then when you put yourself into it, you're getting a result that you control whole thing.
Yeah, like you can, and that's what exactly the thought that went through my head. I was like, I can't control what's going on in my family's life. I can't control really what's going on in my life, but I can control what I eat. I can control how hard I train. I can control the mindset I have about it. And I set my sights on winning that show. Like, I was like, no, I have to fucking win this show. And I poured everything I had into it. And my brother and my dad were still in prison at this time when I started doing this. So I was going to prison while I was prepping for my show to visit them, facilitate all that stuff. Me and my younger sister, because we were essentially the adults in the family. My mom, it was like, I can't deal with this. So it was like, okay, well, who's going to? It has to be you. So fitness saved my life in that sense, because if it wasn't for that, I probably would have ended up down, probably doing drugs a hell of a lot more than I was doing up until that point. And just finding other ways to escape. So it became my escape into helping me kind of get control again of my life. So after that, that's when I kind of really throw myself in. And sure enough, I won the very first show. I won that show. And I remember like getting off stage and my sister came and hugged me and we started crying because she knew that was what had saved me. And she knew that that was the thing that helped me stay strong so that I could be strong for her. Because it was essentially just us two kind of in this battle while the rest of my family was kind of spread out everywhere else. We were in Houston. We were where, I guess, everything was happening and took place, and we were the ones that were kind of making sure that our family didn't have to worry about it, you know.
Does she still live here?
She still lives here, yeah. She works at Memorial Hermann. So yeah, it was definitely a lot, but that was kind of the conception of why I became so passionate about fitness, more so than anything because I realized just how much, no matter what your childhood was like, and it was from that point, that's when my life just started going up, because I really realized I'm like, no matter what's happened to you as a child, no matter what you've been through, no matter what, difficulties have come your way, if you can find something that you have to give yourself 100% to, and you do that, you will succeed at it. You will succeed. And I realized that like when I started getting into business, I'm like, if I can take that same energy and that same passion that I had for fitness and channel that into my business, then I know I will succeed at this too.
It's interesting. The stories of those that come from traumatic environments, especially through those young impressionable ages, where that formats within our psyche, our perception of the world. And we follow this blueprint that was built from that era, right? And when people come out of it, typically like that pendulum swung, a lot of people stay there and it becomes tragic. I mean, the stories of people that we've all seen, the exposés, and and yet you come across people like you that you found, yes, you got a taste of it, but to then err on the side of, this isn't giving me what I'm really looking for. You found it in a controlled mechanism of fitness, working out, the health, I put in this work, I find discipline, and then I'm getting this physical result that makes me feel better, that increases the hormones of dopamine and serotonin, that I'm able to now I'm making better decisions. I'm no longer a victim. But so many people get stuck and they stay in victimhood.
100%.
Especially coming from the abusive, the cultish, the things like that. I know that well, not to your extreme, but I did taste that. And I was very similar. Cycling saved me. I started that at 12. That was my escape from a lot of the chaos in that whole world through high school. And that was also, I remember sitting down, I was, I did the drunken parties when you're in high school and you get plastered. And I remember one Saturday morning, bless you.
Excuse me.
That was like a rapid fire. I remember I got home after some party at some friend's house, and I'm amazed I even got home. My mom was vacuuming my room. She knew that I was hungover. Like she was doing it on purpose. Like she knew it. But I never enjoyed it. It was like doing something out of acceptance.
Yeah.
But I always, as soon as I got up, I wanted to go ride. Like that was whatever was going on in life, I was going to go ride my bike. And that was my way physically to release a lot of the tension, a lot of the stress, and get away from.
Yeah.
Because it was me and the bike, and all I heard was the noise of the road. Yeah. Right. It was euphoric.
Yeah.
For me.
It really is. Yeah.
But then when you find people that don't have that switch, whether it was somebody that gave them a moment of inspiration, a moment of clarity. But for you, when you were going through all this, you were in that lifestyle, you were working in the clubs, doing drugs. Was there someone that you saw or that you met that was an athlete or that competed that gave you this little spark of,
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because the reason actually why I even started working out, and it's a funny story. I was dating a guy at the time, and he was a douchebag, 100%. He used to go to he lifted, right? He had a great body. He was in good shape. Good looking guy, got a lot of attention, was successful. And when we used to go out, I would literally be standing next to him, and I would see he would see a girl walk by with a nice body, and I could hear him like essentially like groan, like, or make noise, like, and I'm like, what the fuck? So that was probably my first instigation, like, okay, I want to get in shape. And then I started picking up Oxygen magazine, and there was Ava Cohen on the cover. There was who else was what was the blonde girl who was
Jamie Eason?
Jamie Eason. Yeah, there was who was Nicole
Wilkins.
Nicole Wilkins. Yep. So that was when I actually
bringing up some names.
Yeah.
Wow.
Brooke Mora. That was when I started like being like, okay, this is my goal. This is my vision. And actually, I had a Pinterest board, and it was the very first pin I ever pinned, which was back in, God, I don't even know what year it was. Probably like 2010. The very first pin I ever pinned was the girls on the Olympia stage.
Yep.
And I was like, one day I want to do this. That was like my goal, was to try to get on the Olympia stage, even though I had no idea how to even work out.
Did you get there?
Honestly, I realized that that wasn't, I think my goal was to just to have that feeling of accomplishment and power and presence. It was the personality that I wanted. It was that attitude that I wanted versus the actual physical thing of getting to the stage.
But you did become an IFBB pro. Right.
Yeah, so I ended up becoming an IFBB pro, and I actually tried competing several times after that to get to the Olympic stage, but my mind was no longer in it. I believe that God had brought that level of commitment and fitness into my life as a way to save me from what I was going through, and the minute I was able to actually get through that part, then he was like, I got something else for you to do. And that's when I started trying to figure out, okay, what is it that I'm passionate about? What is it that I love to do? You know, what is my next step? What is my next challenge that I wanted to accomplish? Because it was never, for me, competing was an outlet. It was a way that I could feel in control, but it requires so much focus and discipline that you neglect so many other things in your life, including your career or your, you know, your friends, your family, everything like that. And once I realized, I kind of came to that point that I was like, every time I have something bad going in my life, I just run back to competing. Whereas I need to learn how to control that on my own without having a crutch of competing, especially since it's, when you're doing it at that level so long, it's not exactly healthy anymore. So I'm like, let me figure out how to channel that same mental aspect and keep that part, but not have to do the whole.
You change the association.
Yes.
It's like the people who, the way that they talk when they were all varsity in high school, that was their best time of life.
Right.
There's so many people that through the fitness industry that did compete. How often do you see them after they've walked away from it or retired? About a year or two later, they start posting photos of them on stage going, when I was in the best shape of my life. When you and I both know to walk on stage like that is a very unhealthy prep process.
Very. Yes.
But then also the misguided perception of health that then happens afterward with the rebound. When your body has to come back to a natural
body dysmorphia.
The dysmorphia is a very crippling aspect that people do not talk
100%.
about. A handful have, and then it's quickly canceled. And then sometimes people that do come out are then shamed for it, unfortunately, when they're beautiful, when they're in phenomenal, they're in the top 1% of physique shape as an athlete, right? And yet because they're not shredded and dried out and every muscle striation is visible on stage, they somehow think that it's not the best version of themselves when who they are now coming through. I love asking people, how many 12-week preps did you go through? Because when you look back on going, those 12-week prep cycles, everyone around you goes through prep too, because it is so regimented.
Yeah.
It requires absolute focus, absolute dedication, and commitment to the routine to get you to the result, right? But then when you walk away from that, it's like 75 hard.
Yeah.
How many people do it? And I was talking to, I think it was Tony Watley, I think, and, Patrick Bolanos. Hunter, is Tony Watley an RTA too? Yeah. He is. Talking about the 75 hard and how people rebound heavily from it. Because it's not the weight loss thing. It's not even the show itself. It's who you become through the journey.
Yeah.
Right.
And like with my experience, and this is what I tell a lot of people, because I still get a lot of people who talk to me about 75 hard, and I'm going to do it again too. But 75 hard was not meant to be a physical transformation.
And it has been criticized as such from nutritionists. And it's like, if you read the book, if you get the context of it, you realize this is not about weight loss.
Right.
But this is a physical way to see you're making results.
Right. And that
it's the mailbox.
It's that mental thing that we were talking about. And if you can take that and put that towards any area of your life, then any area of your life you're going to succeed in. I mean, I still essentially, I would say pretty much live my lifestyle as I was living it with being on 75 hard. There's a few things that I don't do exactly like it, but because I've gotten that mental discipline now to where, like I make sure I read every morning, I meditate, I do 2 workouts a day, even though I don't really have to. Like I do 1 outdoor and 1 indoor because I crave that mental discipline. I crave that mental challenge because I know that by having that mental discipline, that's how I started to grow. It's those uncomfortable moments that I kept putting myself in, even though I didn't want to, was when I woke up the next morning feeling so powerful and so accomplished because I did something I didn't want to do, and I pushed myself through a point that I was really wanting to give up and just say, oh, fuck it, you know? So that's what I think once people understand that about 75 Hard, then you want to implement it as almost a lifestyle, because it becomes about that mental aspect where you realize that when you are challenging yourself mentally, not even physically, if you're challenging yourself mentally in any area of your life, that's where the growth happens.
I look at 75 Hard as a elementary school curriculum for discipline. It's to expose how you don't have the discipline you think you do.
Right.
And it gives you a blueprint of check marks to prove it to yourself.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And once you complete 75 Hard, you then go to the next phase. But there's a period of a break to allow you to reflect back on what you just accomplished. Look at who you became as a result, not the physical part, which is great.
Yeah, it's just the side product.
But it's the mental part through it, right?
Yeah.
I've said this a few times in conversations, and it's like life. When we come into our 20s, we want to prove everybody wrong. It's weird. Our 30s, we want to prove how right we are. But then our 40s are, I got nothing to prove.
Yeah.
When you start realizing what life is really about.
Yeah.
Life is about service. Life is about taking what we do figure out and learn,
And
then
it with others.
helping other people through wherever they are in their life. Doesn't matter age, just the pattern and where they are.
Right.
In 75 Hard, and what I've loved about the community, what I think is really cool, is what it does for people that now you're no longer alone in this pursuit of discipline, because everybody's realizing how many people have tapped out. I remember my friend Elliot, his wife, did it, and she, they show it on Instagram every day. They show what they do, and she forgot to take a progress photo, and so she started over. And all these people were commenting, but keep your chin up, and trying to give her the participation trophy encouragement.
Right.
When she was, no, I missed, and I need to start back at day one. And one person said in the comments, well, I'm sure you've taken photos throughout the day, just use one of those. And her comment was, but that photo was not taken under the premise of being a progress photo for this particular challenge. So
and it wasn't done with intention.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and we talked about the manifestation of intention, which is huge. I sent her a message and I said, I forget what day she was in it, 20, maybe 30 something. And I said, when you complete this, you're now going to be 131 hard, not just 75 hard anymore. Because when I was a triathlete, I remember I always hung around because I wanted to watch me and the other guys were trying to break the land speed record. But the people that were out on the race course 2 to 3 times what we were in the hottest part of the day, in the worst conditions of the day, and crossing that finish line meant so much to them because their family was there. It was, whether it was grandparents, aunts, uncles, it was for someone. The family had banners, like you'd see them cry when they crossed the finish line. I always appreciated those that really had to gut it out much longer because that finish line had a deeper purpose than a check, Yeah. And that's actually what created a friendship within her and her husband as a result of that comment, because I really empathize with that. But people throw shade so quick. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. And I think that's really what helps you accomplish anything in life, is when you have that deeper purpose, whether it be, for instance, in my case, when I was competing, I had that deeper purpose. I needed something to control my life. And that's why we have a why, right? Some people do it for their kids. Some people do it for, their family. Some people do it because they want to get wealthy. And I think as you get older, you start finding that deeper purpose to be a much more meaningful purpose versus just, I want to be rich. There's meaning to it. There's value to it. And you realize that it's not just impacting your life, it's impacting the lives of other people around you. Because even, for instance, with 75 Hard, when you when you become that person, you're essentially lifting your family up. You're helping your family too, because you've become a better person as a result. So then the other people around you are affected by it too, which is why I think it's such a great program. And I love seeing just how global it's gotten and how popular it has gained, because to me, it's like, here's now is hundreds of thousands of people bettering themselves and hundreds of thousands of people actually getting control of their lives and doing what is hard, whereas society really wants us just to be lazy and to be weak and to be accepting of who we are and staying in the same place. But then here we had this program that is making you say, no, being in the same place is not okay. You have to grow. Like, you are forced to grow if you want to become better and accomplish anything with your life.
People confuse motivation versus discipline. Motivation is like milk. Milk is for a baby. It helps you get started. Discipline keeps you going. Right. And that's where people lose that transition. So it's easy. And also too, motivation is an emotion. Emotion is fleeting. It's also conditional based on your environment. Right. Discipline is there regardless of conditions. It's something you stick to with your commitment. And that's what makes people stronger in their character, because they're going to get up. I do not feel like getting up and going to work out. Okay. Well, you get up and you do it anyway, because what you're doing is you're proving to yourself that you can do the hard things. And when you do that systematically every day and you look for ways to do that, you're preparing yourself. That's why excessively successful people live by a very precise routine. And there's certain things they do to keep themselves disciplined, because it allows them to mentally be able to handle the curveballs that happen that you're never going to be able to plan for, be ready for, but you're equipped to be able to do it. I think Navy SEALs are probably the greatest prime example. They are trained to operate and think critically during the highest stressful, most emotionally straining moments, so that they can act critically, not based on their own preservation, but the preservation of a bigger mission. And so they consistently train every single day, inducing stress, creating high conflict, creating things that would put your body to the moment where you want to quit, but you continue because you got to get your buddies out, you got to get your team out, you got to finish the mission. And sometimes that mission changes, but you adapt to it. It's like in business. I mean, a lot of people, you know, if the initial business idea doesn't work, then they're a failure. No, you figured out one way not to do something. Right? I was listening to a guy named Blair Sinclair years ago at a business conference. He had started 15 businesses. He goes, it took the first 14th to know how to make the 15th work. And the second one in, maybe it's time to get a real job. Third one in, maybe this just isn't it for you. The fifth one, the sixth one, like it was all, but he believed in himself enough, he wanted to prove himself right. And I think that's where people end up missing, because their why is misaligned with their real purpose. Right?
Exactly.
Okay. So as you came through your childhood and you were really figuring yourself out and you found yourself in fitness, and this was when you were competing, was what, 2010, 2013, roughly? Where did you begin to realize social media could become a real tool of influence? And where did you start to see that opportunity come as an influencer making a career of it?
Honestly, I think social media, at first, obviously, it was just a way for us to share our lives. It was a lot more interactive, I would say, than Facebook or MySpace back in the day, you know, which was more of a almost like a resume
MySpace
page, right? Like what music do I like? Who are my top
five
friends? It became more as a platform which gave us the opportunity to help others, to educate others, to inspire others, to add value outside of the personal relationships that you made. You now had a platform, essentially a stage that you could stand on. And it really gave everybody the opportunity to be that, to be somebody who can be a person of influence and a person who could affect the world around them, and even people that they've never met before. And I would say that for that Instagram didn't become that probably until, 2018, 2019, maybe, really is when it really started to become that, to where people were actually using it as a way to add value. I think before it was just kind of a, hey, look at my life. But now it's really, and I think it's awesome that it's evolved into this platform of more like, you know, what is it that you are contributing to the world around you? How are you contributing? Are you adding value, or are you just using it as a soapbox?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's cool to watch how social media has changed. And I've come to realize that more and more people want to learn something. You know, they want to understand. They want to be influenced in the right way, especially considering that there's so much negative influence out there. For me, I think what really made me want to start using my platform in the right way to really add value is because I have a younger sister. She was, when I first started really using social media, she was like 14. And I knew what was out there in regards to the influence that teenagers were getting in that day and age, and even to this day and age. And I wanted to make sure that I was somebody who she could look up to. That when she came to my page and read my posts and looked at, you know, what content I was giving, that it would, I hoped that in some way it would hit her in a place that said, okay, I can do more with my life. I can become a good person. I can help others. I can contribute instead of just using it as a platform to post selfies. So that's where I think my real passion for wanting to use my social media as a way to help others came from. It initially started with me wanting to just inspire my little sister and just to show her like, hey, social media can be used for good. It doesn't have to be all about you. It can be used for something good. Mm-hmm. And I hoped that it would help direct her and lead her onto that path.
When did you start realizing you could monetize the audience that you were amassing through social?
Honestly, I mean, and this is me being perfectly honest, I never looked at it as a way to monetize. Mm-hmm. I always just, for me, I do love helping others. Like I love helping other people. So for me, it was always just a way that I could help other people. I could inspire other people. It was my way of contributing to society, something good. I never viewed it as a place where I could make money from. It was, how can I make somebody else's life better? How can I make their day better? Or, you know, when I would wake up in the morning, it would be like, how can I inspire somebody today to you know, have a positive impact in their life, or even just get them out of a very dark place that they might have been in that day, you know?
Coming to the health and fitness space, at that time, you became an IFBB pro. And everybody through that period, there were a couple of check marks that people wanted to feel like they've made it. And it was turning pro and then getting sponsored, right? Yeah. And then it was about followers and likes and views. Yeah. And it was always about what was serving them.
Right.
Right. And you saw a lot of people hop from one company to the next. They were always getting discount codes, and it was this chase for validation. Mm-hmm. You took a really different approach with it. And you and I have known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
And you have stuck with one company through this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And that was First Form. Mm-hmm. What I'm curious about with First Form not being the only company out there, A, how did that relationship, how did that connection even get made?
Yeah.
And B, why have you stuck with them? And I think underlying, as an influencer, to help other influencers who maybe aspire to be, or they're struggling, what does it really mean to be an influencer in the first place?
Yeah.
Right.
So, I actually met the guys at First Form at the Arnold sports competition, and I want to say it was 2012.
Wow. Yeah. Because they started in 2009, I think?
2009. I want to say there would maybe they had 3 products out at the time.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I met them on an elevator. I was with my friend Jody Manier, who was their very first, I guess, athlete model and she introduced me to them. And I remember the first thing I remember thinking about them was how passionate they were about what they were doing, and to their belief that they were going to make an impact in the world. Like Andy and Sal and all the guys there, they knew that they wanted First Form to be something different than anything else the fitness industry had seen, because they wanted to do it by actually helping people, by actually making a difference in everyday people's lives and really trying to make an impact, a real impact. And that really stood out to me. That for me,
so that was a different narrative from other supplement companies.
it was a very different narrative from other supplement companies. And I even got approached by a lot of other different companies to go with them. And this was when First Form was still in the beginning, and these other companies were doing very well at the time. But if there's one thing that I respected about First Form from the beginning, was their loyalty. Their loyalty to their people, their loyalty to each other, their loyalty to their customers, and
their customer service is top notch.
Their customer service is amazing. It's probably the best customer service I've seen of any company ever. And I really respect that and really value about
they
that
market
about
from
them.
heart.
100%.
That's the thing that there's a lot of practices that we have in place in our companies that are directly in line with how they operate too. And I actually have some of the shipping receipts in my office taped on the wall.
Yeah.
Because there's a nice handwritten note from one of the employees with their Instagram handle, follow-up phone calls. And, I've ordered products from First Form for a long time.
Yeah.
It was actually because of you. And every time I order something, there was always a handwritten note.
Yeah.
And that was something that...
It was novel, especially back in the day.
Yeah. And even nowadays where so many things are automated, you cannot automate heart.
100%.
You can't fake it because there's a certain level where people really care about what they do. And it's also, even in social, it's not a copy paste reply. It's authentic. Thank you. It's the gratitude that you realize without this one customer's order, if I don't earn their loyalty, then I'm giving it away to somebody else. And the best practices that have been implemented in that company. I remember I ordered a pre-workout. This was years ago, and I tried it. I got a follow-up phone call, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was Brian Teach, who's still with him. He's actually our corporate rep.
Yeah.
But he called me to see if I liked the product, and I was, why are you going to call one guy that ordered one pre-workout? And I didn't really like it.
Yeah.
He goes, let me send you another one. I got another one in the mail, like a few days later. But that's something you don't get from companies.
Right.
Majority, which is why people believe retail is dead, just bad retail is.
Yeah, bad retail
right?
is agreed.
But when you're being approached by all these companies, and First Form is new, but there's a significant difference of feeling. There's a gut instinct that you're getting.
Yeah.
How did that continue for you? Like, how did that finally go, I'm going to go with them? Did they offer to you? Did you ask them?
So I was actually with another company at the time when they approached me. It was a company based out of Europe, not very well known here in the States, but I guess they were fairly known in Europe. And when they approached me, for me, it was, I don't even think I thought twice about it. I think I saw their vision so much more clearly and what they wanted to accomplish from where they were, from the small company that they were. I could feel their vision and how much more passionate they were about what they were doing, not just because they were trying to sell people supplements, but because they were trying to actually create a culture, a community of people committed and dedicated to making the world a better place. And I think that's something I've always had in my heart, is to try to make a difference in some way. And even when I went through like my teenage years where I was so against it, I wanted to be selfish and I just wanted to think about myself. I think when you experience something like that, you realize just how empty you feel when you're not really doing things to help other people. It's an empty feeling.
It's disingenuous. Yeah.
Yes, you're just living for yourself, and then what? So I think finding First Form and understanding that their core values, and if you look at their website and see what their core values are, those are some powerful core values. Those are some things that really make you stop and think and say, these people want to change the world, and they want to change the world for the better. And so I just told myself, I said, you know what? Hey, I'm committed for the ride. And those first couple years was during when I was competing. And you and I talked about this a little bit earlier about the metabolic damage that can happen after you compete, the body dysmorphia, all things of that nature that happen when you go through those ups and downs of your competing cycle when you stop and you get back into it. Because we both know this, back in the day, there wasn't really a come off period of competing. It was like the day your competition was over, hey, I'm going to go consume 5,000 calories in one day. And so I went through that. I personally experienced that metabolic damage to where my thyroid was shot. My hormones were completely off whack. I had put on some weight. I'd probably gained about 25 pounds, 30 pounds after I competed, which was the heaviest I had ever been in my life. And I had a photo shoot at First Form, and I was not in shape to do it. I did not look like the typical fitness model at the time. And I was not in shape to do it.
And what's crazy is you were also in great shape.
I was.
But when you compare it to a fitness competitor.
When you compare it to what the fitness models of that time were doing for the magazines and for the supplement companies, where they were super lean, and they were literally, most of those girls who were in those magazines were competing or about to compete when they did those photo shoots. Oh, yeah. 100%. So here I was.
She was the week over, the day after.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So here I was getting ready for this photo shoot. They flew in a photographer from LA. I'm sure they spent a lot of money on this particular photo shoot to get some content for some of the products that we had coming out. And I knew I wasn't where I needed to be, especially for what we were trying to do. And we did the photo shoot. I showed up anyways. We did the photo shoot, and I remember I walked outside of the studio, and Andy was standing there, and I remember just feeling I felt bad. I was like, I'm sorry, like I'm going through some metabolic damage right now. I feel like shit. And I said, I really want to win, my pro card, but I don't know how to get my body back to where I need it to be. And he didn't judge me. He wasn't mad at me. He wasn't pissed off or anything. He said, it's okay. He goes, I know you're going to get back to where you need to be. And he goes, I believe that you are going to win your pro card. He's like, I believe in you. And I've never had anybody believe in me in that way, probably ever before in my life. And as down as I was feeling at that moment, to have somebody who, who I respected and who I admired believe in me so much, I was like, wow, like this is really cool, because I'm nobody, and sure enough, I did. I competed, I want to say the next year I ended up winning my pro card. But that stuck with me always. That really, really stuck with me. And I think that's what made me want to be so loyal, is because even when, in my opinion, I was at my freaking worst, he didn't give up on me. He didn't say, she's off the team, she's fired. He was like, she's going through a rough spot in her life. She's going to figure it out. She's going to get back up on her feet, and she's going to keep going. And after that, I was committed for life. I was like, this is where my loyalty stands. They were loyal to me even when I wasn't in the place that I should have been. So I'm going to stay loyal to them through and through. And I've always believed in their mission. I've always believed in their vision, and watching it evolve into a community of people all committed to being there for each other, to supporting each other, to creating that loyalty, to creating that sense of family, to where I hope everyone gets the chance to go to First Form HQ one day, because when you walk in there, you truly feel like you're home, like everybody's so friendly and so kind and so helpful. Like, can I get you anything? What is it that I can do? They've created a culture of excellence that I've never seen in any corporate company that I've ever worked for. I've worked for oil and gas companies, law firms, you name it. I've never seen a collective group of individuals all striving to be their best. Literally every single person that you will encounter there is of that same mindset. How can I improve the lives of the people around me? How can I make myself better? And I don't think there's any culture like that out there in the world as strong as that one is. So
for those that want to be an influencer or trying to be struggling, where do you think they get it wrong?
I think it's really easy for people to get caught up with trends or things that make people look cool or make people get that one-hit wonder sense of fame, make people go viral. I think people don't realize that that's not lasting and it doesn't self-sustain itself. Nobody is going to keep making video after video after video that's going to go viral, or post after post that's going to go viral. So what is it that you have to do in order to sustain your audience and to keep your audience following you or interested in you? And it goes back to making sure that you're adding value in some way. You either got to be entertaining, you got to be educating, or inspiring. You have to be creating content that is going to some way personally affect an individual. In other words, don't be speaking to a crowd, be speaking to one person. And you speak to that one person, they're going to tell their friends about you, then they're going to start following you. You speak to another person, they're going to start following you. And it's also about being authentic and like true to yourself, like what your interests are, what your passions are, sharing your struggles, sharing your highs and lows. For me, I always try to be really positive because I know that there's a lot of negativity in the world. And I try to make that my forefront, but I'm not shy about telling people like, hey guys, I had a bad day today. Like shit happens. I just got to kind of keep pushing through. Because I think that helps people relate and that shows authenticity as well. I wouldn't say by any means that I'm a pro at being an influencer or a pro at my social media. I think there's a lot of other people out there that are really, really good at it. But I've just realized that where people respond the most, where I get the most engagement and most interaction is when I am truly just being myself and who I am on my social media as well.
Because the gatekeepers have changed when it comes to attention with company. I love the gift of social media, what it's giving to people to scale attention in niches and different narratives, different segments. But it's also given companies the ability to align with a new channel of attention with an influencer. But most companies don't understand how to navigate that relationship. There are databases out there where you can, put in certain parameters and it'll spit out, a slew of influencers that you can connect with. Our companies, the only influencers that we actually have that are part of our companies are those that were customers first. Because that's an authentic love for the product, the service, the brand. We get hit up all the time. What's your favorite part about this company or this company? Well, I haven't actually done that yet.
Yeah.
Why would you want to promote something that you don't have a true, genuine interest and loyalty to in the beginning already?
Right.
Where is that relationship? But companies also, I feel like, struggle to figure out how to partner with an influencer too. Can you speak on that? Like what do companies need to look for? How do they even approach that with an influencer?
I think a lot of people, I think there's different classes of influencers. There's obviously the influencer that is like, people don't read magazines anymore, right? Very rarely will you see somebody with a magazine in their hand anymore. Everybody gets their information and their entertainment from social media, even their ads. So before is where we used to place ads in the magazines for your products. Now it's being done through social media. So I think there's different levels to social media.
Yeah.
There are your ads, which can be the very large influencers who have hundreds of thousands of followers and a very large reach, who are really there just to initially put eyes on the brand. That's all they're really there for. They're not going to help people understand the brand or help people show what the value of the brand is or really help people form that connection to a brand. They're just there to make people look at it, look at the brand. Because once you show somebody something in front of their face over and over and over again, eventually they're going to be like, okay, let me see what this is about, right? And then they're going to click on that page. And then once they get to the page or the company, if that company is portraying a good message and you can see that they truly care about their customers and they truly care about the quality of their products and their services and interacting and engaging with people who comment on their posts and making it personable, then that person will be like, okay, let me try it. Let me give it a shot once. Then once they do it and they experience something like the customer service that, for example, First Form has, that's when they really buy in. That's when they buy into the company itself. And then you have the influencers who are there, people who have smaller followings like me, who actually want to create and form relationships with those people who use our products, because I have experience with it. So I can tell you, what it is that I like, why I like it, what it does for me. I'm there to educate that person. And I try to do that a lot on my stories, especially with First Form's products. Like, why is taking post-workout important? Like, what is it about the protein and the carbohydrates together that is going to actually help you achieve your results? Because everybody is looking for a solution to a problem. So if you can provide that solution and find influencers who are genuinely care enough about their audience that they want to provide a solution to whatever problem it may be, and in my case, health and fitness, then those are the kind of influencers that will actually create more of not just a following, but a community and a culture. Because people want to actually feel like they're cared about. Like, they don't want to just feel like another cog in a machine or just another customer. They want to actually feel like they have a personal connection to the brand that they're using. And that's why, eventually those customers eventually become influencers themselves and bring other people. Anybody can be an influencer nowadays. It's just everyone has different levels and different sizes of platforms. Some people have very small followings on social media, but have huge impact in their community. And those are considered micro influencers, but those are actually the people who are on the ground talking to people, explaining to them in person, face to face, having that ground relationship with people. And when you have that personal connection, the stronger the personal connection you can have to your customers and the more face-to-face connection, I think the stronger you can build your community and your following.
Everybody's an influencer when you look at it, just like you said, because if you're wearing Nikes, somebody sees, oh, she's wearing Nikes. I'm going to go buy me. I like those Nikes.
Yeah.
You just influenced a purchase. You just influence somebody coming to that brand to get something.
But it's about that person. So say if you said, hey, I really like your Nikes. And then you tell me, well, let me tell you what's great about these Nikes. Let me tell you that these are the best running shoes. I feel so comfortable when I run in these shoes. I wouldn't say they're great for weight training, but these are really great for running. And if I'm a runner, I'm immediately going to be like, I got to go check those out. So you just influenced me, and that's the key, I think, is adding that extra step and that extra value where I'm not just showing you a brand. I'm actually showing you how to use it or why it is good. What is it about it that I love it?
The educational part of why do you have it a part of your life?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
You have the product placement where, it could be the shaker bottle, it could be the protein container, you're doing your greens at night or whatever it may be. And it's not the hard sell of buy this and here's the discount code. It's I'm drinking my greens tonight. And the reason why I drink these is because XYZ. Somebody's going, oh, let me go check it out. And then you happen to provide a link, right? So it's a way to promote something that you inherently actually use in your life. You're showing people you use in every life. You show the authentic love for the product or service of that brand. For influencers that are finding themselves struggling, maybe that they used to be able to influence and that now they're realizing their audience isn't converting. What do you think they need to look at?
I think they need to look at actually engaging with their audience then. It's not just about saying, oh, look at me. It's start looking at them. Start going to their pages. Start interacting with their posts. Find hashtags that are based around your community or what it is that you do, whether it be swimwear or fitness or whatever, and start interacting with people who would interact with you and what service you provide. Comment on their stuff, like their posts, send them a message like, hey, you look like you're, working super hard. I see the progress you're making. I think actually taking the time, and nobody really wants to do that because that is a very time consuming thing to do. But when it's, again, goes back to like that person might not have been following you before, but you commented on their post, you engaged with them, you sent them a message of encouragement. They're going to start following you because they're going to be like, why did this person take the time to actually care enough to reach out to me? And I think that that kind of bridges that gap to where you no longer are just, oh, look at me. It's, hey, I'm just a regular person, and I respect and admire the hustle and the effort that you put into bettering yourself.
So I think it's interesting for you at this point. You've been an influencer. Companies have been coming to you, and they've sent you products and whatever. And now that you're stepping into launching your own brand in swimwear with Sun Patrol Swimwear, you're now flipping the script a little bit.
Yeah.
You're also kind of playing both sides now,
Yeah.
right? But on a completely different segment, completely different industry. What made you want to step into creating a swimwear line in a highly competitive, multi-billion-dollar industry that's owned by some giants? And what made you want to come into this and say, I'm going to give this a shot?
So I think what really actually triggered my desire for creating swimwear was because at the time I was, the swimwear that was coming out it was no longer classy, to say the least. It was very skimpy, revealing a lot.
South Beach.
Yes. It just didn't have that elegance to it. And
A couture feel.
a couture, like a very classy, like Audrey Hepburn, Sophia Loren, like that elegant, that woman. I didn't want it to be, like a girl that was trying to show her body and sexualize her body. I wanted a woman to feel empowered in the swimsuit that she was wearing. I wanted her to feel confident. And I wanted women to realize that no matter what stage of life they're at, whether they just had a baby, if they've lost a lot of weight, if they're trying to add muscle or whatever it may be, you can still feel empowered wearing a bikini or a swimsuit. You don't have to show a bunch of skin in order to make people notice you. It's that confidence that you have when you're in something or wearing something that makes you feel powerful and makes you feel confident and pushes your insecurities aside is what I wanted to bring out again. I wanted to bring out that confidence doesn't come from just bearing a bunch of skin. It comes from actually being authentically who you are and feeling confident with what God gave you and knowing that you're working towards becoming better in a sense.
While you're by the water.
Yeah.
You don't want to get a little sun.
Yeah.
So when you decided, okay, I'm going to do this, what was your first step?
Oh,
Because
man.
for people that are looking to, do some kind of apparel line or something, what was your first step to get this thing started? Did you have to create an LLC? Like, did you call somebody, hey, what do I even do? Where do I start?
I would say I initially started, because I had sketches of the swimsuits and, kind of what I wanted to create and stuff like that, but I had no idea where to start. So I remember I had the name, I knew and I think I bought the domain probably a year and a half to 2 years before I even did anything with it. I just that was the name I wanted. And I would say the first step before I even started creating the LLC was, okay, can this be done? Like, how is this going to be done? And what are the steps I need to take in order to get there? So I started by researching, trying to find manufacturing companies, and that took a long time. Eventually I'd like to be able to help, like my goal is to kind of use my platform to help other girls and women who want to start their own clothing companies or whatever it may be, to kind of show them essentially what like the steps would be, like what kind of, manufacturing company, where do you find your textiles? Where do you go to look for this stuff? Do you just do a Google search online, or is there more to it? Because
Did you have somebody that helped you?
honestly, I really didn't. I kind of just did it on my own. I ended up learning about the Magic Convention in Las Vegas, and I went and I found out that Danny, who is First Form's apparel and design director, was there at the time doing research for First Form as well. And she was honestly so key in just kind of helping me, because I walked in this huge giant conference center and I was like, I have no idea what I am doing here. I have no idea what I'm supposed to look for. I have no idea of anything. And so she was like, okay, this is where you're going to find your fabric. This is where you're going to find your, hardware. And then this is where you're going to find kind of like what people are doing for the upcoming seasons. So I spent 2 days kind of just going through that. And I remember being at that convention before I went to the first, I was so nervous. And I remember texting one of my friends and I'm like, I'm so fucking nervous right now. And she's like, why? You're going into a convention. You're not going to have to do anything. And I'm like, but I have no idea what I'm doing. I almost feel like a fraud, you know, like I'm walking into this thing, like I've got my little Sun Patrol shirt on and I'm like, I don't have a clue from Adam what I'm supposed to do here. I just knew that I wanted to make that first step to like understanding how that industry worked and how that business worked. And that was just kind of a step into that direction.
A lot of people get paralyzed by that fear.
Oh my
right?
God.
So how did you take that fear, but then still step into that room and be able to take advantage of those 2 days? Because a lot of people would have just gone, I'm out. I can't do this. It's too big. It's too overwhelming.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm going to walk into a room of experts. They're going to look at me and make fun of me because I don't know anything. And you don't know what questions to ask or anything, right?
Nothing. Yeah. I think I remember just walking in there and saying, I'm going to observe. I'm just going here to watch and to learn as much as I can, almost like a gathering of information. And then once I get back to my hotel room, I'll process that information and
give yourself a mailbox.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that's what made it a little bit less daunting for me was, okay, let me approach this as what are other people doing? How are other people, doing it? Because that's essentially what a convention is a lot of other businesses or companies that are selling their products and their services as well, which could be in line with what your business is doing as well. So that's why I think it kind of like helped me like, eased up the gas pedal a little bit for me was just like, let me just go in there and take this as a learning experience and see what I can learn from this, see what I can gather. And honestly, I left, I didn't have a manufacturer then. I still didn't have a supplier, still didn't have anything, but it helped me feel like, okay, there's hundreds of people out here that are doing this. They all started somewhere. They figured it out. I can figure this out too. At least I understand like the layout of what it's like, of what I would need. And now it's a matter of me just kind of gathering and putting those pieces of information together and structuring it into my own vision, my own company.
So did you know how to sew?
Like hand sew, but not like an actual like full piece. And believe it or not, it's funny. Danny told me this. She said, Kerri, you picked the hardest industry to be in. Swimwear is incredibly hard because it requires specific type of sewing, specific type of stitch, specific type of material.
And you're going, really?
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, shit. Okay. Well, it's too late now. I've kind of already
I'm in the deep end.
Yeah. Now I've already kind of made that jump. So now it's just a matter of me learning how to perfect whatever it is. And that's what I consider this is like, for me, this is a journey, 100%, especially coming from having zero background or knowledge or experience in the fashion industry. This is really just exciting for me because I'm learning something new about something I didn't know. And I think for me, that's more valuable than anything is now I'm having such a large array of experience in business that I never had before. And regardless of what happens down the road, which I'm going to fucking succeed. I 100% know I am. I am going to be in Miami Fashion Week. I'm going to have my brand as a household name. But until I get to that point, I take every day and every challenge I come across as an opportunity for me to learn something new and for me to just add to my knowledge bank of information about things I didn't know before. So that's kind of how I look at it. And eventually my goal is to one day be able to, have little boutiques maybe on different islands around the world and, experience life at the same time while enjoying to see the fruits of my labor in all over the world.
So has this been self-funded? Did you borrow? Did you get an investor? Like how have you, because it's not cheap to get into.
It's not. I saved a lot. So I was working several jobs in order to save up. And I'll be honest, I don't really have very expensive tastes. I have some expensive tastes, but not a lot. And so I for me, it was about saving the money and putting it towards something that I hoped in the future could make me a lot more money. And it's not to say, like, I don't want anybody to ever think like, okay, I've taken all my savings and I've put it into my business, and now I'm going to get a full return on that. Not necessarily. There's so many things that you don't think about that go into helping a business grow. So now anything I make, I just put it right back in. And I continue to add money to that piggy bank to where it's going to go all towards the business, you know. And I've changed certain aspects about my lifestyle. I don't travel as much. I don't buy expensive purses and things that I used to buy, because I'm like, to me, this means so much more to me than that.
I think that's where a lot of people fall short too. They want to maintain their current passions, hobbies, lifestyle, but yet they also want this to be successful.
Right.
And at some point, something has to sacrifice.
Something has to sacrifice.
Short-term comforts for a long-term goal, right?
Yeah.
I've noticed that.
Yeah.
I've noticed that about you for sure.
Yeah.
But I've also never known you to be somebody who was pretentious or materialistic either.
Yeah, I never really was.
Yeah.
I never really was. For me, I always said this, I was a lot more about experiences than
Yeah.
anything. Like
Your travel is the thing that
Yes.
that's the thing I've always enjoyed about our friendship and just being connected, is just watching your photo video journal of the adventures you take.
Yeah.
I think my favorite's probably Malta.
Yeah, Malta's
I mean, my
great.
God, every
Croatia
photo
is
is like
probably my favorite.
It's like a postcard every
It
photo.
really
It's
is.
insane.
Yeah, it really is. And that's honestly a lot of where my vision of the swimwear came from too, is just from my upbringing. Like, I grew up literally by the beach almost my entire life. Lived in Sicily, Greece, Italy, Malta. I was almost always by the water. And so for me, I've always just had a passion for that stuff, like the tropical beaches and traveling around the world. And one thing I love so much about traveling is it exposes you to cultures, and it allows you to experience things that you wouldn't otherwise experience if you lived in the same place or never traveled anywhere. I think
There's only so much you can get from a book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Travel allows you to use other parts of your brain that you didn't know were there. And then once you start experiencing these things, it helps you gives you a much bigger understanding for life and for other human beings, and empathy.
Yeah.
And more understanding too.
Appreciation for what you have.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And I think even like, I was born in India, and I have memories of India. We were very poor in India. And I remember what that life was like. And I remember what it was like to struggle. And I remember what it was like to not have everything. And I think having that has also been another driving factor for me to be so successful, is because I want to be able to provide my future, my family, with the things that I wasn't able to have as a child. And I think that's a driving factor for a lot of people too, is like, they want to be able to give. I want to be able to give back, you know, like, I want to be able to enrich somebody else's life in some way, and help my children live a better life than maybe I had as a kid, because I know what that was like,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. So now that you've become this business owner and you've done some samples, right? You've had a run. How has that been as a business owner now with a brand that does need influencers to try to get some visibility? How has it been for you to take that side of it?
I would say that's a tough one, because honestly, like, I've tried thinking about, like, it's definitely helped me identify people who are true influencers versus people who have a large following, because there really is a very definitive difference between
It's
the
hemispherically different.
two. 100%. I think the people who are true influencers are people who have that clout and that relationship with their audience, a very personal relationship with their audience, and they're able to actually influence them just by being themselves, you know, to do anything or buy anything, whether it be an eyeliner or a foundation or a skincare product, you know, because they trust the person. When you have somebody who doesn't have that personal relationship with their audience, then people don't trust them. There's no level of trust there. So that's why I think creating that personal relationship with your audience develops that bond, that form of trust, and where now they trust you, that they know that you're not going to lead them astray with a product or with a service. And I think that also, I talk about this a lot, about how not being a brand whore serves you so much better in the long run, because when you're somebody who's constantly pushing all kinds of products and showing all kinds of things and this and that, you start to lose that touch with your audience, and you start to lose that trust with your audience.
You're like a QVC influencer.
Yeah. Because then they're like, well, wait a second. Is she promoting this just because somebody gave it to her, or because she's trying to make money off of it? Or is it because she truly values the product and values the company and believes in the vision of the company, who the company is, what they stand for, and their products?
No, this is actually the best protein.
Yeah.
I know I said this other one 2 months ago was the best protein, but now this one's really the best.
Exactly. So I think that's like a piece of advice I always have for influencers is, don't sell yourself out for anything. Make sure that you really understand, can relate, and have that personal relationship and experience with the brand, and really truly believe in it too. Like, believe in what their core values are, and what their principles are, and what they are doing to create those relationships with their customers too. I would never want to work with a company who didn't have a good customer relationship with their customers, because to me, then you're a representative of that brand as well. And that doesn't speak very well for you. Yeah.
What's been because with working with influencers, and it's bootstrapped. And so anything you do give out, there's a big hope on your end that you're going to be able to get, that influencer is going to be able to at least do their end of it, give some highlight, talk about the brand. Have you had to take some losses on that?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's kind of a risk that you have to take with that, as a business owner. There's going to be people who are just out there looking for free stuff. And I get
really?
Yeah. I get hit up a lot on Sun Patrol, like, hey, I'm an influencer. If you send me some swimwear, I'll post about it and, whatever. And I'm like, okay, let me go to their page and see if they respond to their comments on their, from their followers. Let me go see if they actually interact.
Such a simple audit.
Yeah, it really is. It's a simple audience. Like, are they actually building relationships, or are they just posting pictures? Because they might think they're an influencer because they post pictures for a bunch of brands. Yeah. But to me, an influencer is somebody who actually engages with their audience.
I've Ben Francis, Gymshark. It's valued at $1.8 billion brand now. Yeah. When they got their private equity group to come into it, but and he just recently stepped back in as CEO.
Oh wow!
Because he stepped away from it. It was about 4 years ago, Hunter? Yeah. He stepped away because he realized his passion was actually the development of the brand, not the operation of the brand. So he hired a really good CEO, which for a guy that starts something, to be willing to walk away from the helm of it to a degree, but still drive it. But, he started off because he was doing his own cut and sew, and he was hustling these at gyms and on the back of his car. Then he literally took every dollar in his checking account to secure a booth at I think it was FIBO, but it was a year later. But he drained his account to secure that one booth. And when he got that booth a year later, that's when it hockey sticked.
Yeah.
But he still had to grow and develop it. But now they've got, I think, 5 to 7 warehouses across the world.
Yeah.
With not one retail store.
Right.
The power of social. But the one thing with their brand and their influencers, the long-term ones.
Yeah.
Right? Because like with First Form, there's you, there's Emily, there's Derek Wida, there's Jenna Fail. That's the other one too. But the one consistent thing, and I think for all of you guys, and for any other brand like Gymshark or anybody else, it's the real love for the brand and the building of the community.
Yeah.
The brand, the products are just a vehicle to get people into a community, an environment, a culture.
Yeah.
That is really what it's about.
And if you look at even any of those athletes, any of the First Form athletes, they all have their own communities. Like Emily has her community with Evolve. Mike Cunahan has his community with fishing. Big Ty has his community. All these guys, all of them have their own communities that they reach out, they cultivate, that they interact with. And it's kind of from there it grows, because then their community has communities of their own, and so on and so forth. So it ends up becoming a very much of a ripple effect.
What kind of community do you envision with Sun Patrol?
Honestly, for me,
And you just lit up when I
Yeah.
asked you that. Like, that is a huge spark for you.
It is because
Your demeanor changed when as soon as your eyes roll back. Yeah.
I really, honestly, like my community, I really want it to be about women kind of doing something for themselves, and women defying the odds of what maybe they grew up with, or how difficult their childhood was, or what they experienced, and just coming into their own, and just feeling that empowerment, that desire and that drive to really pursue their passions and their own dreams, and make themselves proud in whatever way, whether it be getting, healthier and in shape, or really starting their own business, or, creating a community of their own within their, group of people. I really wanted it to be where I have a community of women who feel empowered enough to step out on their own and do the thing that scares them the most, and really just push themselves and make something of their own lives too.
Risk and fear are things that in our primal nature resist out of survival.
Mm-hmm.
When you've faced a lot of these big moves in your life, picking up and moving from Austin to a completely new city, you know nothing, you don't know anybody, to start a life for yourself, to stepping into an industry that you don't know anybody, stepping into developing a swimmer line and going to a conference where it's overwhelming and you feel like why am I even here? Where do you make that mental shift? How do you get yourself to that point? Because so many people struggle because we're averse to it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to face fear. We don't want to do things that make us uncomfortable, which is why we typically do things that appease our nature of comfort and happiness. Right? Because people think that the happiness is what the goal is, and it's really not.
Right.
That I found.
Yeah.
The more we try to grow, the more we're going to face resistance,
Mm-hmm.
Often to challenge our own commitment to ourselves, but also to give us room to realize what more we have to go through and to learn and to become more resilient in things. And as you progress through a lot of these things with you, Kerri, when you face the days of self-doubt, when you face the hurdles of, I don't know how to figure this out, where so many people stop and because they're overwhelmed by it, what do you do, or how do you help yourself continue to get up and keep moving forward? Because I think that's where a lot of people struggle.
I think for me, I always look about where I came from. I mean, when I left the cult, I was 17 years old. I didn't know anything, just based off of, because growing up in the environment that I was in, we weren't really taught very much. We were taught the basics. So for me, essentially having to figure out who I was, reinvent myself, learn how to be social, how to connect with people and all that stuff. It was almost like being a child and then trying to figure out how to become an adult in the matter of, months. I suddenly had
Crash
to
course.
learn. Yeah, it was a crash course, and so much more than what the average, I think, child would have gotten, because I didn't get to go to high school or mingle with people who had different opinions or views or influence or anything like that. It was me going from a community of one mindset, one philosophy, one belief, one culture, and then throwing myself out into the world where there was thousands of different opinions and views and ideas, and then sifting through those and figuring out, okay, which one's going to be best for me to help me with my goals and help me achieve my goals. And I think that was like my starting point for figuring out who I was I knew there was a fire inside of me. And I always talk about this, like nature versus nurture. What causes one person to say, I am going to make something of myself and I'm going to make an impact in this world, and I'm going to make a positive impact in this world. And somebody else who grew up in that same environment who ends up going down a slippery slope and doing nothing with their lives.
Right.
And both have had the same experiences in life, both went through the same thing. But I think it truly does come down to, like, there's a resilience in all of us. And if we actually look inward and realize that, hey, you're freaking strong, you can get through anything, then and you grab onto that power within you and really use that to drive you. And that's honestly what I tell myself all the time. Whenever I get stuck somewhere, I'm like, Kerri, look at how far you've come, from the age of 17 till now I'm 37. In 20 years, essentially, look at what you've accomplished and how much you've done, and look at how much farther you can go if you keep that same drive and that passion going. And I think everyone has a story. Everyone has a story. Your story could be totally different than mine, but it's not to say that I might not have been able to live through your story. My story is mine, and it was the struggles that I faced and the struggles that I've overcome. And you might look at it and say, oh my gosh, that was horrible. I don't know how I could have never done that. Well, I could have never done maybe what you went through, So we all have a story. We all have something that we really, truly overcome. And it's when we grasp onto that power and that thing that pushed us through and that drove us to keep going and not give up, and carry that through the rest of your life. And every time you're tempted to give up, you look back and say, okay, I overcame this. I got through this challenge. I got through this sickness. I got through this injury. I got through this loss. You realize those things start stacking up, and it's like, who's to say you can't do this?
David Goggins calls his cookie jar.
It's a good one.
My daughter, 13, almost 14, going on 30. Oh my God, help me. She has this jar in her room, and she has written down all these little positive quotes. And I asked her about it one day, and she said, I write and I put in that jar things that make me smile and make me happy. When I'm having a tough day, I pull one out of the jar. My kid just inspired me. It was like amazing, right?
Yeah.
What I have found is, for me personally too, and as I've shared this with other people, so many times we look back on our past in the wrong perspective, the wrong goggles.
Right.
Because we're looking at it, criticizing ourselves. Why did I go through this? Why did I go through that? I could have avoided this. I could have not done that. Could have whatever. But what I do look at is going, okay, what was my hardest moment? My absolute darkest, hardest, most questionable moment in my life. And I look at it. Okay, I got through it.
Yeah. And I think the key to that is you're not a victim anymore.
Right.
You might have been a victim when you were a kid because you had no choice, and that was, what was told for you, and you didn't know any better. You were a victim. You're not a victim anymore. And I think so many people get stuck in that victim mentality. Oh, I had a tough childhood. Oh, I went through this. Oh, I went through that. Everybody has gone through something. Right. And when you realize that, hey, I'm going to take the things that happened to me, and instead of victimizing myself and allowing myself to feel sorry for myself, because I did that at one point. I allowed myself to feel stuck. And, I was like, oh, I didn't have the same upbringing as other kids did, or I didn't have the same experiences. I never got to go to high school. I never got to go to prom, any of that stuff. And then I'm like, well, wait a second. I've been to 36 countries. I've,
Wow. Have you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I've exposed myself to a whole lot more culture. I may not have as much book experience or social experience, but I have these experiences that maybe other kids didn't have. And so it's kind of looking at, it's assessing your life and looking at it. Okay, what parts was I a victim? Great, cool. Let's just move on from that, because now I have all these experiences that I did go through at the same time that I learned from, and that caused me to help me to grow and become better.
Life is a tool chest.
It really is.
And it's not, a bad experience is not a bad experience as if it creates a crutch. It's a bad experience that taught us a lesson.
Yeah.
And as I'm also exploring just self-awareness and behaviors and traits and who we are as people, one of the things I've realized about people is we talk about that person's wrong for me, or that person's the right person for me, or this is I'm the right person for this, or I'm the right person for that. And I think that's where they get it wrong. There's not a right or wrong about a person. It's who we are.
Yeah.
Who we are through a situation And if the outcome didn't give us the outcome we wanted, then what do I need to change about my reaction, my behavior, my thought process, my perception of myself, my perception of the situation? It's a lesson. Yeah. It's not right or wrong.
Yeah.
That is the binary way to look at life. That is actually the biggest crutch, I think, that we all do this to ourselves, is we look at how bad of a person I am at this. I'm not good at that. And we had a manager meeting with a lot of our corporate management, and one of the managers said, "I'm just not good at this." And another one said, "Yet." I thought that was the most profound addition, because it gets you out of being a victim and stating, this is just how I am. No, that's how we choose to be. So we can choose to look at it a different way and go, no, I've got room to grow. So I'm going to ask you this, because being a business owner, growing this business, dealing with all the things that come from that, all the unknowns, all the things you're trying to figure out, plus just your role in people's lives, as a friend, as a sibling, and then people that you are part of their life as an influencer through First Form, and then your relationships through that. To balance all of this and still be able to get up every day, and even in our best days, we still have moments where it's like, gosh, I got to get up and I got all these things I got to do. What is your routine that helps you maintain control of your day? Because a lot of people wake up and they kind of let their day dictate them.
Yeah.
How do you get up? Do you have a routine? What do you do every day to really help yourself stay in the pilot seat? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I would say, honestly, having a routine has probably been absolutely crucial to my life. And it's been the one thing that kind of helps me stay focused and guided.
Mm-hmm.
I wake up in the morning. I always read from a self-development book, at least a chapter.
Mm-hmm. You get up and this is the first thing you do is you read?
Literally, yeah. Mm. I'll go downstairs and get like my coffee and my Opti-Greens or whatever. And then I come back upstairs and Sunday curls up on her little bed there and I read. So I'll read a chapter until I feel like I've absorbed. And reading for me in the morning, I can focus so much better. Mm. And then I have a journal. I wouldn't even call it a journal because I don't always journal. I write whatever is on my heart. So I'll either, say gratitude. I'll have, words of gratitude, or
it's your book of expressions.
It's my book of expressions. Yeah. If I feel like there's something that I'm stuck on or that I can't, get through, or that's heavy on my heart, I'll write about that. If I'm going through a bad time in a relationship or something, I'll write about that. If I need to give myself a little pep talk and kick myself in the butt, I'll usually be like, okay, figure out what's stopping you. Why are you doing this? What behaviors are you giving yourself? Are you putting 100% into your day? Are you putting 100% into the minute? What is it that you can change to make yourself better? So it's almost like my book of experiences, information, gratitude, life experiences, the day. And I put that all on paper, and then I go about my day. And then I try to start my day with working out. But exercise is also a real release for me. If I'm having a bad day, I will be like, okay, I will look forward to going on my walk, and I'll put a podcast in my ear or some good music in my ear. I'll go for a walk. I'll go for a bike ride. And it just helps me shut down that negative, drowns out that negative noise, and allows me to reflect and really appreciate everything that we have in our lives. And get off social media, like sometimes that can be our best friend, but also our worst enemy. And it's really hard when social media is your job, essentially.
Right.
Because, you gotta interact, you gotta post, you gotta do all that stuff. But even if it's just for a couple hours of the day where you just shut off your phone, and I'm not going to look at it.
Because you're not being reactive.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. You're allowing yourself to actually just kind of go back inward and say, okay, you got this, you're in control. Because social media can be, you get on there, you start to compare. You get on there, you start to feel like you're not adequate enough, or that you're not smart enough, and that you're not good enough. But I mean, it's like everybody always says, like social media is just the highlight reel. You don't get to see what's going on behind the scenes or what these people are going through. And a lot of people do put their best foot forward when it comes to social media.
Yeah.
So recognizing that and realizing that, everybody is going through stuff. It might not be at that point in time, but at some point in time they were. And I always view everybody's life is like a roller coaster. When you might be on the top part of the roller coaster, about ready to take the ride of your life, there's somebody else out there who's on the bottom part of that roller coaster trying to inch their way up to that top, and they're struggling, and they're uncertain of what's going to happen next, and they're uncertain of what's on the other side of that hill of the roller coaster. But then once they get up there and they can see the opportunity and the thrill of it, then you might be down at the bottom, you know? So I always try to look at it that way. That's what keeps me, I think, from comparing myself to other people, is realizing that everybody is on this journey with us, and we're all just on different rides, but we're not all going to be at the top at the same time. We're not all going to be at the bottom at the same time. And that's what we're kind of there for each other, is to just help lift the other person up and say, hey, don't worry about it. Like, this might be your down today, but tomorrow you might be having the best day of your life.
As you've networked and been a social person, and going out a lot in your 20s, your circle's changed, right? Your lifestyle, your behaviors, what you're creating for you has changed. How important is that circle of people that you keep around you, that you hang out with, that you invest your time with? For you, how has that circle changed, and why did you change it?
I think there's a couple aspects to this too, because even like we talked about, like victimization. A lot of times your circle can keep you in that victim mindset, which they might be very well meaning and they might really truly care
out of
about
love,
you.
yeah.
But they keep you stuck there, and so when you're stuck in that victim mindhood, it's really hard to grow. So I think identifying that first and foremost, and realizing like, okay, who is keeping me stuck and who is actually helping me grow. That's the first thing. And as I've gotten older, I've also realized just sometimes how frivolous, and I want to do everything with intention. I want it to have a purpose and a meaning and somehow be fulfilling to my life or my happiness or my growth in some way. And, you start thinking about it and you're like, man, if going to dinner and sitting around talking about absolutely nothing or who did what or any of that stuff is pointless, I don't want to do it anymore. Like, I would honestly rather be curled up with a good book or, just kind of in my own world with my own thoughts and really reflecting, because if you think about it, most people don't really have that much time where they're just by themselves too. And I think
they're scared too.
I think a lot of people are scared too. Yeah. I think being alone can be very scary. And I think especially even with women too, women are so afraid that, we're going to end up alone, or that we're going to be alone as we get into adulthood, and we're not going to find a good guy to have a family with. But I think, I truly think that things like that, God brings them to you. You don't have to constantly be out there looking for them. God will bring them to you when the time is right. And maybe there's something that you need to learn by being on your own at that time, or something that you need to get through, that once you've gotten through that, then, God will bring that person into your life. But I see that all the time, like women constantly just out there looking for the guy, looking for the one. And I'm like, I hate to say it, girlfriend, but that's not where you're going to find him. You ain't going to find him in the bar. You ain't going to find him in the club. It's when you're truly confident in yourself and you don't have anything to prove to anybody, is when you start to attract that kind of attention. And when you start attracting the right people in your life, people that are going to help you grow or be in your corner and stand by you and not give up on you and fight for you. And as you get older, you start to identify those people a little bit easier, and then you just don't have time for the bullshit.
Because there's a lot of that.
There's a lot of bullshit out there.
Yeah, and that's hard many times, I think, because we were talking about this earlier
Yeah.
before the show, just with social.
Yeah.
You know, and it is entertaining. Sometimes
It can
I'll
be
sit.
fun. Yeah.
Sometimes I'll either, do I want to watch, when I'm working, do I want to watch a movie, or if I'm going to take a break, maybe I'm just going to scroll through social media.
Yeah.
Let me just get entertained and distracted for a minute.
Yeah.
Because when I'm working, especially when everybody's in bed and it lights out, that's usually when I go back and I have my creative work, my focus work, because I'm not having the phone ring, I'm not having texts, and I'm not in constant reactive state throughout the day. I get a lot accomplished. Hunter's the same way too.
Yeah.
But I always have to have something on in the background. I can't just have total silence.
Yeah.
It's too loud for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Part of it's my tinnitus.
Yeah.
That I need a little something. But I'll get into social many times, and I can't tell you how much I just literally laugh out loud from the funniest. People are creative.
Very creative. I say that all the time.
And their sense of humor, some very dark, but also some that I'm like, how did you even come up with that?
Right.
It's just the most amazing.
Humans are fascinating to me.
They are.
Really fucking. I mean, for me, I would rather go somewhere, sit and people watch all night. I freaking love doing that because to me, you can learn so much about the way that the mind works, about the way humans operate. And by doing that, it's helping you to understand your audience better even. Like, how do people think? How do they respond? I love people watching. It's probably hands down one of my favorite things to do. Sit there and just watch people.
I like watching body language.
Body language is great. Yeah.
I think what's great is when you're at a restaurant and you see a couple, you can always tell if it's like the first or second date. You can always tell.
Yeah,
and then I love just watching the body language, like the cues.
Yeah.
Did he pick up on that? Oh, did she notice that?
And exactly.
It's like a play-by-play.
It is. It's almost like watching a play-by-play movie where it's kind of like you got to guess. You got to figure out like, okay, where's this going? Where's this going to end up? It creates a story in your own head too.
When you start to learn it, I've taken some classes and read some books from FBI interrogators that talk about body language.
Yeah.
And how it's not one, they talk about when your eye shifts up or right, the person's lying. But there's not going to be one specific thing about body language that is a tell-all.
Yeah.
It's the accumulation of several things together that creates the physical story of where somebody's at.
Yeah.
Which is very useful in business meetings, negotiations, dating. You can use it to really figure out, is somebody telling you the truth? Yeah. There's funny little tics that people have. They think they hide, but they really don't.
I think the problem is, though, that so many people are just so self-absorbed and think about themselves so much that they don't actually take the time to actually think about that.
That's
or
true.
When they're in an environment, they're so worried about how they look, how they feel, what's going on with them, that they don't actually take the time to look and see and read those signals and those body language and figure that stuff out. Everybody wants to be heard, but nobody really wants to listen.
I think it was a Stephen Covey book, and it was to really have influence with people and then also feel heard, you must first seek to understand, not to be understood.
100%.
It's empathy 101, right? But anything, when you're trying to do something new, you don't want to waste time telling everything that you think you know to somebody. You want to ask questions so you can learn.
You can understand what it is that they want to know. Because if it's something that they want to know, then you can pick and choose what information you're giving, so that way you're not just wasting their time and you're not wasting your time.
But also, most people are not really listening to engage. They're listening to figure out what they're going to say next.
Yes.
They're kind of waiting on the put me in, coach moment, right? Oh, they just took a breath. Now I can finally say what I really want to say. Versus they may have just completely missed something that they could have learned so much from, right? Kerri, thanks for coming in today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
There is so much, knowing you as a friend, there's so many other elements when you have an actual conversation like this that you really learn a lot about somebody that goes deeper than, hey, how you doing? Or, I always feel very grateful when I get to have great phone conversations with you and other friends that I have because I don't have a huge circle. Yeah. I have a very tight circle, but it's people that I love. When I was talking to a buddy of mine, who is a therapist, and every time we talk, we go deep with subjects and talk about life and things that happen. And he goes, MD, you realize people don't have conversations like this often. And I went, What are you talking about? I do. Pretty much everybody in my life, I have these conversations daily. Like, I love going deep on life and behaviors and triggers and where we are, what were we learning, what did we, gosh, this happened to me, and yeah, that happened to me too. And you're starting to really learn a deeper level of humanity.
Yeah.
Then, how's your favorite sports team?
And it's those conversations that really are fulfilling. Like, if you can decrease your circle, but have conversations like that, and you feel that joy, you feel that fulfillment of being around people because it's quality over quantity.
When we're young, we want to acquire as much as we can.
Yeah.
We want to say we have all these friends. You know, what's the movie? She's Out of Your League. And the guy says, I have 15 friends on Facebook. Made him excited. 15 people he doesn't know are his friend. You know, I mean, that's where people get caught up in follower. I have so many followers, but what kind are they?
Yeah.
You know, how does that really help translate in life that it's good people? You know, I went and I got rid of a bunch of stuff that people that why am I connected, you know, because I'm pretty private on that aspect. You know, everybody that I'm connected to, I've had a personal interaction with.
Yeah.
There's not one person that I've never met, talked to, FaceTimed, had dinner with, had a business interaction with that I personally know. It's cool to think, well, that's actually kind of a lot of people when you look at, I mean, it's not hundreds of thousands of people. But anytime I post something, there's either a comment or a DM about, hey, what's cool, I appreciate that. Or, hey, I got a question for you. I get a lot of that. Hey, MD, I know you know this person. I know you've done this. Can I ask you a question? That's probably, for me, that's what I love about it. You know, something I've done, something I've shared, and I can help you in some way.
Yeah.
That's honestly the greatest moment of fulfillment right there.
It really is. It really is. And once people realize that, then I think that shift in the world will start to change, that, you know, happiness really truly comes from helping other people and for adding value everywhere you go. If you're, you know, if you're doing everything for yourself, you're not getting that sense of happiness or fulfillment or that joy. You know, it's about making yourself better and then making the lives of those around you better.
I was talking to my kids not long ago, actually. We were talking about social media. My kids both have an Instagram, which I think is so funny because there's like one post, but they always do stories if they do them. My son doesn't do anything, but he has a YouTube channel. And I was talking to him about why I have social media, why I have my Instagram, why I have my Facebook. And I said, to be honest, for me, when I look back at my life, it's archived with about 12 photos, right, that were taken of me. There might be a scratch in the back of a date or context, but that's all I've really got. I said, I did my social media to create an archive for you guys to see what life was like growing up. Because the photos, the videos, and the captions, the things that I shared about that moment, you'll always be able to look back on chronologically and look at what life was like. You know? Yeah. And I said, this is not for me. I really don't care if people like my stuff. I don't use hashtags on my personal stuff, right? I don't need to. I'm not looking for visibility. I post things because I want my kids to look back and go, oh, you know, because it's such a great use of this platform.
Yeah, it is.
And Facebook, I love it. Like every day I get a reminder of what happened a year, 2 years, 5, 10 years ago. Because I think I started my Facebook in 2009, and I've got, you know, my son was 3, my daughter was 1. They've got their whole life through social media that they get to look back on and go, wow, you know?
It's so true. And that's something that our generation doesn't really have. You know, like when we were...
Because you're Gen X, aren't you?
Yeah, I was 84.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. We don't, you know, we don't really have like the books and books of photos or memories or things that were said that impacted our lives. We just have our memories, you know? So this new generation has so much of that, which allows them to actually glean the information, sift out the stuff, and then it can add value to their future generations.
Figuring out what was it like when I was 4? Let me go back and look on Dad's Instagram.
I know, right? Right? Yeah, man, I wish I had that. That would be
Might
cool.
take a minute, but I'll get there. But it's funny. I've noticed, you know, we're so quick to post on our stories that aren't visible. And so I've had to remind myself to go back and make a post because that's what's going to be able to be chronologically pulled back up.
Well, even like I always say this too, from an influencer standpoint, if you're making a post about, say, a product or a service or a supplement, tell it in your story. And then if you can, follow it up with an actual static post as a kind of a way to remind your audience, like, hey guys, I made a story about this today. this is kind of a little bit more into detail about what I was talking about. And then that way in the story, you're summarizing things. And in the post, you're actually kind of going into a little bit more detail.
Smart. Great tactic, guys. Hopefully you guys have been taking notes. Kerri, thanks again for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
I can't wait to sit down again when Sun Patrol
Yes.
is the next Gymshark.
Hell yeah. That's the goal.
Guys, if you want to follow Kerri, you can follow her on Instagram at Kerri M. Hayes. And if you want to follow Sun Patrol Swimwear, go to Sun Patrol Swimwear. And if you want links to all that she's doing, just go to her Instagram.
Yeah.
And she has got all the information. Very entertaining, very educational, very empowering.
Thank you.
There's a reason why Kerri is sitting in this chair. And just from a personal standpoint, I like to have conversations with authentic, real people, right? Because that's who I want other people to connect with.
Yeah.
But guys, when it comes to influencing, when it comes to the health and fitness space, or if you're in a position where you're looking for somebody to give you some guidance, Kerri is your individual. If you want to just follow her journey through entrepreneurship with this apparel brand and swimwear, follow her. Because I'm telling you, you're always going to get the realest content. Not so much throwing shade or opinions about a lot of things, but Kerri is one of the most real people that I'm very proud to know as a friend.
Thank you.
But somebody that if you ever want to have a beacon, Kerri's one of those people to have a beacon.
Hey, and if you ever need somebody to talk to, I'm here. Seriously. Like, I never want anybody to ever feel like they're alone in this world. And if you're ever struggling with something or going through something, like, I promise you, I'll be there to listen.
There we have it, guys. This is all free. The only payment we ask is that you share it.
Yeah.
Help other people. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, stay tuned.